Good fucking day indeed, and what a ride it's been. From our first tentative steps into Yohara Map 2, chatting up Theodan like old pals, to the Herculean task of gathering tainted core's horns and skins from the most stubborn of monsters. And let's not forget the soul-sucking quest for those damned corrupted soulstones. You guessed it. Today, we are going to talk about the gloves item and what you need to obtain before being allowed to equip it. If you head out to the wiki page, you will see that in order to equip a gauntlet, the character must have previously purchased the gauntlet license. This is obtained after successfully completing the Glove License Missions quest series from Theodan on Yohara. Here we can see the Glove License missions. There is a total of 6 quests. You get the first one, Disastrous Powers, by speaking with Theodan in Yohara Map 2. We need to kill monsters in Yohara until we get 30 tainted core/horns and skins. So let's head out there and try our best. The body count? Over 150 deaths and more than 40 Metins smashed to smithereens. And for what? A bit of rest from Sungma Will? Well, yes, but also for the sheer thrill of the hunt and the glory of the quest. Given the epic length of this video, I'm spicing things up with a twist. I'll be weaving in my very own spine-chilling tales to keep you on the edge of your seat. So grab your blankets and get cozy, because it's story time, my friends. Darkness in Hollow Creek. In the heart of a dense, foreboding forest lay the remains of Hollow Creek, a village shrouded in tales of darkness and despair. Ethan, a novelist with a penchant for the supernatural, had heard whispers of its existence from a crumbling, ancient tome in a forgotten section of a local library. His heart raced with the thrill of uncovering a story untold, a secret hidden from the prying eyes of the modern world. The village, according to legend, was once a vibrant community, mysteriously abandoned overnight without a trace of its inhabitants. It was this mystery, this void of understanding, that drew Ethan like a moth to a flame. His fascination with Hollow Creek was not born of idle curiosity, but a deep, unyielding obsession with the occult. Ethan's life had been touched by the supernatural from a young age, when he claimed to have seen the ghost of his grandfather at the foot of his bed, whispering secrets from beyond. This encounter had marked him, driven him, fueled his every endeavor into the realms of the unknown. It was as if the very threads of his fate were intertwined with the arcane and the mystical, leading him to this forsaken place. As Ethan stepped into the village, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows that danced between the ruined homes and overgrown pathways. The air was thick with a palpable sense of history. Each step forward, a step back in time. The village was eerily silent, save for the sound of his footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by the gentle wind. It felt as if the village itself was holding its breath, watching him with unseen eyes, waiting. Ethan was drawn to the center of the village, where an ancient fountain, now dry and cracked, stood as a monument to days long past. Around it, the houses bore the scars of neglect. Windows shattered, doors unhinged, the laughter and life that once filled them now just echoes in the void. It was here, in this tableau of abandonment, that Ethan felt the strongest pull, a visceral tug at the very core of his being, as if the village itself had summoned him. He had come to Hollow Creek seeking inspiration for his next novel, but as the shadows deepened and the unseen eyes seemed to grow ever closer, Ethan realized he had found much more than a tale to tell. He had stumbled upon a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, where the past was alive and secrets were etched into the very soil. Hollow Creek was not just a setting for his story, it was a character, alive with the memories of its lost inhabitants, whispering its dark secrets to those brave or foolish enough to listen. As night fell, Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine, not from the cold, but from the realization that he was not alone. The village, with all its shadows and whispers, seemed to enclose around him a spectral embrace from which there was no escape. And it was in this moment, under the watchful gaze of the moon and the stars, that Ethan's journey into the heart of Hollow Creek truly began. As night enveloped Hollow Creek, Ethan's initial determination wavered under the weight of isolation and unease. The village, with its pervasive sense of abandonment, offered no comfort to the weary traveler. Yet, the practicalities of his situation demanded attention. He needed a place to rest, a brief respite from the haunting atmosphere that clung to him like a second skin. It was then, amidst the crumbling facades and shadowed alleyways, that he stumbled upon an unexpected sight, a small hotel, its flickering neon sign a beacon in the darkness, proclaiming Hollow Inn. The hotel, if it could be called that, was an anomaly in the desolation, its structure surprisingly intact amidst the decay. Its facade bore the marks of time, yet stood resolute, a testament to forgotten resilience. The sign, with letters dancing in the erratic glow of neon, seemed almost out of place, a relic from another era that had somehow found its way into this forgotten corner of the world. Pushing open the heavy wooden door, Ethan entered the lobby, a small, dimly lit room that smelled faintly of dust and old wood. The decor was a mix of eras, with antique furniture scattered haphazardly around the room, their surfaces covered in a thin layer of dust. The air was stale, as if the room had been sealed away from the world, untouched by the passage of time. Behind a worn wooden counter stood the receptionist, a middle-aged man with a pale, expressionless face and eyes that seemed to gaze into the distance, focused on something unseen. His movements were slow, deliberate, as if every action was a choreographed part of a routine, long since devoid of meaning. Ethan approached the counter, clearing his throat. "Excuse me, I was hoping to get a room for the night." The receptionist's gaze shifted towards Ethan, his expression unchanged, as if the arrival of a guest was an event of no significance.
A room.
His voice flat, devoid of emotion.
Yes, we have rooms. No one comes to Hollow Creek anymore. No one but the lost and the damned.
Ethan, taken aback by the receptionist's bleak outlook, tried to inject a note of levity into the conversation. "Well, I'm not sure which of those I am, but I'll take a room all the same." The receptionist nodded, the ghost of a smile playing on his lips, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes.
Of course,
He replied, pulling a key from an array of hooks behind him.
room 7. It's one of our better rooms, not that it means much. The hotel, like the village, has seen better days.
As Ethan took the key, the receptionist's hand lingered for a moment, his grip cold.
Beware the night traveler.
He said, his voice dropping to a whisper.
Hollow Creek has a way of revealing truths we wish to remain hidden. The night is long, and shadows cling to those who walk alone.
With that cryptic warning, the receptionist turned away, his attention once again lost to the void that seemed to consume his thoughts. Ethan, feeling the weight of the man's words, made his way to room 7, the key heavy in his hand. The room, like the lobby, was a blend of times past, furnished with items that spoke of forgotten elegance. The bed, though aged, was surprisingly comfortable, a small mercy in this place of lingering sorrows. Yet, as Ethan prepared for bed, the receptionist's words echoed in his mind, a harbinger of the darkness that lay beyond the walls of the Hollow Inn. Ethan fell into a restless slumber, the bed's unexpected comfort doing little to ease the unease that gnawed at his mind. What felt like mere minutes of sleep were, in reality, hours, as he was jolted awake by a sound that cut through the silence of the night, a high-pitched squeak, repetitive and insistent, followed by a faint, distressed mumbling. "He killed me! He killed me!" His heart pounding, Ethan sat up, the echoes of the voice swirling in the darkness of his room. It felt as if the air had thickened, charged with a palpable sense of dread. Compelled by a mixture of fear and curiosity, he rose from the bed, his movements slow, as if moving through water, and crossed the room to peer out the window. Outside, bathed in the moon's ghostly light, lay the playground he had passed on his way to the hotel, its swings and slides casting long, twisted shadows on the ground. The sight of it now, deserted and eerie, sent a shiver down his spine. Despite the fear that tightened its grip around his chest, Ethan felt an inexplicable pull towards the playground, a voice in the back of his mind urging him to investigate. With a deep breath, Ethan made his way out of his room, the hallway of the Hollow Inn, silent and unwelcoming. As he passed the reception desk, the receptionist lifted his gaze from an old, worn ledger, his eyes meeting Ethan's with an intensity that stopped him in his tracks.
"Don't worry,"
the receptionist said, his voice a monotone devoid of comfort.
"He likes calling people out in the dark to play with them."
The words hung in the air between them, a chilling omen that rooted Ethan to the spot for a moment. Yet the compulsion to uncover the truth behind the voice, to understand the mysteries of Hollow Creek, drove him forward, out into the night. As dusk turned to night, Ethan's surroundings took on a sinister cast, with shadows stretching across the cobblestone like dark fingers, and the moon casting an eerie, pallid light over the village. The air grew colder, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones, carrying whispers of the untold stories buried within the walls of Hollow Creek. It was then, amidst the chorus of creaking timbers and the sighing wind, that Ethan first heard it. A child's laughter, light and clear, cutting through the oppressive silence of the abandoned village. The sound was out of place, a haunting melody that seemed to have no source, no direction, yet unmistakably real. It echoed off the decaying walls, a spectral giggle that danced around Ethan, leading him in circles. The laughter seemed to play with him, a game of hide and seek with an invisible participant. Ethan's initial intrigue morphed into a chilling unease. The laughter, though innocent in any other context, here felt malevolent, a lure dragging him deeper into the village's clutches. He followed the sound, each step heavy with dread, as it led him away from the relative safety of the village square and towards the shadow-laden outskirts where the remains of the houses were swallowed by darkness. The laughter grew louder, more insistent, as if urging Ethan on, guiding him to a destination known only to the unseen child. It was a maddening cacophony that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, bouncing off the village's ruins in a disorienting symphony of echoes. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, his breath visible in the cold air, each exhale a plume of mist that faded into the night. As he reached the edge of the village, the laughter led him to an old playground, a place of joy and laughter long silenced by the village's tragic fate. The swings moved slightly as if touched by an unseen hand, their rusty chains groaning under the weight of invisible occupants. The slide, twisted and tarnished by time, reflected the moonlight in an eerie glow. It was here, in this relic of happier times, that the laughter reached its crescendo, surrounding Ethan, closing in on him with a palpable intensity. Suddenly, the laughter stopped, leaving a silence so profound it was deafening. Ethan stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat as he felt the gaze of unseen eyes upon him. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, as if the very air awaited what would come next. And then, from the shadows of the slide, a small, shadowy figure emerged. Its features were indistinct, blurred by the darkness, but its presence was undeniable. A child, or something that once resembled a child, its outline flickering like a candle flame in the wind. The figure stood still, watching Ethan, its silence more terrifying than its laughter. Ethan's mind raced, caught between the urge to flee and the desperate need to understand. Who was this child? What had happened in this cursed place? Questions swirled in his mind, but deep down he knew some truths were better left undiscovered. As quickly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, dissolving into the night, leaving Ethan alone in the cold, silent playground. The encounter, brief as it was, had changed him. A chilling reminder of the thin veil between the living and the spectral world that lay just beyond sight in Hollow Creek. The village, with its dark secrets and forgotten tragedies, had unveiled its first tale, a prelude to the horrors yet to come. A few days have passed since Ethan had seen the child figure, the image haunting his dreams each night, morphing into a series of nightmarish visions that left him drenched in sweat and fear upon waking. The most vivid of these dreams always ended with the same unsettling image: a decrepit church, its steeple piercing the sky like a gnarled finger, beckoning him. Ethan could no longer ignore the pull of the church. It was as if the very fabric of his dreams was woven with the destiny of this forsaken place. Driven by a force he couldn't understand, Ethan found himself standing before the church as twilight bled into night, the last rays of the sun extinguishing behind the horizon. The building loomed before him, a monolith of despair, its windows dark and soulless, the once sacred grounds overgrown with thistles and brambles. The air was thick with a malaise that clung to the skin, a tangible dread that whispered of sacrilege and decay. The church's heavy wooden doors groaned in protest as Ethan pushed them open, the sound echoing through the empty nave like the moans of the damned. Inside, the darkness was almost palpable, a living entity that enveloped him, swallowing the weak beam of his flashlight. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of mold and the unnameable odor of decay. Ethan's footsteps echoed off the stone floor, a lonely, hollow sound that seemed to call forth the spirits of the past. As he ventured deeper, his flashlight flickered over grotesque murals depicting scenes of ritualistic horror. The paintings were a macabre tapestry of suffering and darkness, their subjects rendered with a disturbing realism that suggested a familiarity with the atrocities they depicted. The figures in the murals seemed to shift and move in the corner of his eye, their twisted faces turning to follow him as he passed, their painted eyes alight with a malevolent glee. The deeper Ethan ventured into the church, the more the atmosphere thickened, a sense of ancient evil permeating the very stones. The air grew colder, the shadows darker, until he stumbled upon the entrance to the crypt. It was hidden beneath the altar, a narrow staircase winding down into the earth. Its entrance sealed with an ornate lock that gleamed under the beam of his flashlight. The lock was an intricate puzzle of symbols and mechanisms, a testament to the lengths taken to keep whatever lay beyond sealed away from the world. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as he examined it, the designs depicting scenes of unspeakable horror, each symbol a dark sigil whose meaning twisted at the edges of his understanding. Driven by an obsession he could no longer control, Ethan set to work on the lock, his fingers trembling as they traced the patterns. With each movement, a sense of dread grew within him, a realization that he was about to unleash something that had been meant to remain hidden. Yet, he could not stop, his actions guided by a force beyond his comprehension. After what felt like an eternity, the lock clicked open, a sound so final, it seemed to echo through the very depths of his soul. The door to the crypt swung open with a groan, revealing a darkness so absolute it seemed to consume the light from his flashlight. As Ethan descended into the bowels of the church, a cold wind rose to meet him, carrying with it the scent of earth and decay, the whisper of ancient secrets long buried. What lay beyond was a mystery that Ethan could not have imagined, a darkness that would envelop him, changing his fate forever. The crypt awaited, its secrets hidden in the shadows, its horrors yet to be revealed. Down the crypt's narrow, winding staircase, Ethan descended into the heart of darkness, each step taking him further from the world he knew and closer to a truth he could never have imagined. The air was thick with the silence of centuries, a quiet so profound it seemed to muffle the beating of his heart. At the bottom of the staircase, Ethan found himself in a chamber that time had forgotten, its walls damp with the weeping of the earth, the air stale with the breath of the grave. In the center of the chamber lay the skeleton of a young boy, its bones a pale testament to the tragedy that had unfolded in this forgotten crypt. The skeleton was small, delicate, similar in height to the child figure from Ethan's visions, the one who had led him to this forsaken place. Near the skeleton, mounted on one of the ancient stone walls, was a mirror. Its surface was dusty, but beneath the layer of time, it gleamed with an unnatural luster, as if it harbored a light of its own. Drawn by a force he could no longer resist, Ethan approached the mirror. As he gazed into its depths, he saw not his own reflection, but that of the little boy, his eyes wide with fear, tears streaming down his cheeks. The boy was screaming, a silent, desperate plea that transcended the boundary between worlds. "Please help me." Then the mirror flickered with a sudden, blinding light, and Ethan was bombarded with a rush of images, each one a piece of the boy's tragic story. He saw the boy, alive, his face twisted in pain as a figure cloaked in the garb of a priest subjected him to unspeakable tortures. He watched, helpless, as the boy was dragged into the crypt, his cries echoing off the stone walls as the door was sealed, leaving him in darkness, alone, forgotten by the world above. The images came faster, a whirlwind of suffering and despair, until, with a final burst of light, they ceased, leaving Ethan staring into the tear-filled eyes of the boy in the mirror. His heart raced, pounding against his chest, a mix of rage, sorrow, and horror overwhelming him. He had to look away, to break the connection that bound him to the boy's fate. But as he turned, a new reflection caught his eye. Behind him, in the mirror, stood the figure of the old priest, his eyes dark with malice, a knife glinting in his hand. Ethan spun around, but there was nothing, only the oppressive darkness of the crypt. Yet when he looked back into the mirror, the priest was closer, the knife raised, its blade aimed at Ethan's throat. Panic seized Ethan, a primal fear that rooted him to the spot. He wanted to scream, to run, but his voice was lost in the silence of the crypt, his legs frozen by the terror that gripped him. In the mirror, the priest's reflection smiled, a grim, triumphant grin as the blade descended. And then, darkness. Ethan's fate remains a mystery, his story a whisper in the shadows of Hollow Creek. The crypt holds its secrets tight, the truth of what transpired in its depths lost to the world above. But the village waits, its silence a keeper of tales, ready to ensnare the next unwary soul drawn by the whispers of the past. Now head back to Theoadan after we collected the 90 pieces. He will tell us to kill more monsters in the area until you have collected all 10 corrupted soulstones. back to Theowadan and bring him the corrupted soulstones. Speak to Theowadan and receive your reward. +5 Sungma will. Now we have to do all this yada yada, speaking with Uriel, Old Woman, Guardian, and Storekeeper. We get back to Theowadan to pick the next quest. For this quest, we need to go to Mount Sohan and look for the researcher. Go to the first village and talk to Theowadan there. Go to Cape Dragonfire and talk to the stable boy. Go to Gautama Cliff and capture the con artist. Go back to Dongan Plains and talk to Theowadan. Then, back to Theowadan we went, our pockets heavy with the fruits of our labor, our spirits and characters slightly battered but unbowed. With a flourish and a nod, Theowadan handed over that sweet, sweet glove license. Activation's a breeze, and just like that, we're kitted out and ready to roll, gloves and all. It's more than just equipment. It's a badge of honor, a testament to our grit, determination, and sheer bloody-mindedness. So, there you have it, you kinky bastards. Another day, another quest in the saga that is Metin2. We've laughed, we've cried, mostly from frustration, and we've kicked some serious monster ass. What's next on the horizon? More quests, more battles, and yes, more death. But that's the life of a warrior, isn't it? Glorious, painful, and utterly, utterly addictive. Remember, each quest is more than just a mission. It's a story, a battle, and a triumph waiting to happen. So gear up, head out, and let's continue to make legends, one quest at a time. Until then, keep your swords sharp, your wits about you, and as always, keep grinding.